1 in 3 adults between the ages of 18 and 34 is at home living with their parents. When I was 18, I was already out. I had moved to Philadelphia. A couple of my friends, we had a place, and man, we really couldn't afford it. What if it is better to take a couple years to build your foundation, maybe to get through college and not have to worry about an extra expense like an apartment bill and these other things? Is it just unique to our culture? Is this something that happens in other countries? So let's get into it. And we'll be back in 3, 2, 1. We gone. Welcome back, family, to another episode of the First Sip Podcast. I'm your host, Dekimbe Smith, and this week we are sipping on some good old black coffee while we also talk about our spending issues. Yes, our spending issues. I know we like to talk about the country and how much money we're spending all over the place, but today we're going to talk about us. And I'm including myself too, because Lord knows I'd be spending money on a lot of crazy stuff that I probably shouldn't be. So over the past couple of years, we've been hit with crazy event after crazy event after crazy event, going back all the way to the Great Recession and now coming up to the recent pandemic. And I bring up these issues because these have been the times when we've seen the surge of people moving back in with their parents, because things get tough. When you're hit with these different economic events, you start asking yourself, how do I continue to deal with it? I'm barely able to save money from the last event, barely able to get back to a good job. So what do I do? Maybe it is a good decision for me to take a step back, move back in with my parents, not have to worry about paying that rent, and start building up that nest egg so I can go back into society and actually feel like I can contribute. But some people may not look at it that way. Some people may say, you know what? I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to keep doing what I need to do, and I'm going to step out on my own as early as possible. And that's where I said, I think back to when I was first out here in Philadelphia, and it was tough. And you ask yourself, it's what would life be like if you don't have to pay rent, if you don't have to pay a mortgage, if you don't have to pay for certain things? Maybe your food bills might start cutting down. And these are all questions that we start asking ourselves when we start looking at these bills and saying, man, things were a lot easier when I was at home. And obviously, some people are making that decision to go back home and cut down on those expenses. Now, what does this do for them long term? Does it allow them to go ahead and put themselves in a better position to build their credit? Does it allow them to put more money aside from their job if they are working full time? Hopefully they are, because that would be a whole different conversation, right? It's one thing to move back in with your parents and say, okay, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get ahead. And it's a different thing to say, like, okay, now I got this, situation. I'm going to hang out in the basement and just do what I need to do to get by. It really comes down to the choices that you're going to make if you're in that situation. Now, obviously, we live in a society that likes to spend money. Here in America, we like to consume. We like to buy everything that we see. We have Black Friday coming up, Cyber Monday. We got Christmas. We have a lot of holidays coming up that are very closely connected with spending money on a lot of things that honestly we probably don't need. And I read another stat earlier talking about holiday spending that said roughly 28% of credit card users are still paying off holiday debt from last year. So when we ask ourselves, what are we doing to, get ahead and actually put ourselves in better situations? We also have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to keep ourselves in our current situations? Now, going back to the question of, is this better for young adults but bad for the economy? Obviously, it's not going to be good for the economy. If people are staying at home, spending thousands and thousands of dollars less a year on things like housing, food, and all these other categories, of course, the economy isn't going to be where people would say it needs to be, right? But that's where I also push the question further and say, is that based on the way we do things here in our culture? Is this comparable anywhere else? Or do we need to change some of these habits and say, okay, maybe we shouldn't be kicking kids out of the house at 18 years old, 19 years old and saying, go ahead and figure it out. Maybe the economy does need to slow down a little bit in certain areas and say, okay, maybe we won't be renting a whole bunch of apartments to 18 and 19-year-olds, but maybe they'll be better off when they're 22, 23, 24, when they've maybe built a little bit of savings and a little bit more ground after getting their first job, graduating college, and these types of things. It's not going to be great for the economy that wants that boost of income, but it'll be better for these individuals so they're not going out there and making crazy decisions. So that's just a stance I take on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Now, that brings me to the next topic that I wanted to talk about this week, which was the fact that 56% of Americans right now still can't afford a $1,000 emergency expense. And when you think about that, that's probably not something new that you've heard. We've heard this for years and years and years. But the interesting thing to me is that this isn't changing, right? This is something that no matter when times are good, when times are bad, people seem to not have that emergency fund, that nest, that backing, so they can protect themselves from the worst situation. And we've all been there, situations where you have a flat tire, maybe, you have a leak in your roof at home, and you start asking yourself, where am I going to find the money for these things? And there was another survey that came out that said most people said that if they had to cover $1,000 emergency, they would just pay it on a credit card and then pay it back over time. So when we look at these things, we start seeing the same habits pick up in all these different areas where it's okay. I know I can't probably afford these things, but let me go ahead and try to do it anyway. Or I know I should probably protect myself because I know an emergency is going to come up, but I'm still not going to do what I need to do. And these are the trends and the cycles that I'm looking back on and seeing over and over and over, and asking myself, I'm like, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between the people who, no matter what income they're making, they're able to save money, they're able to make better choices when it comes to spending on cheaper items as opposed to higher priced items. And, they, like I said, they have that emergency fund. What's the difference? Is it just a matter of choices? Is it a matter of education? Is it a combination of the two? I think it's a combination of both, right? You have to know, okay, I know I need to put money aside for certain things. How much can I reasonably afford to put aside on a regular basis so that I'm not also having to dip back into that savings and cover my regular expenses because maybe I tried to save too much money? And I'm saying this from experience. I remember when I got my first jobs and I was starting to make regular money, and I said, okay, I'm going to put a lot of money into my savings because that's what I think I should be doing. But then you don't know your budget. You don't know how much you're regularly spending on a regular basis. And now you're dipping back into that savings bucket and saying, okay, well, I know I got money over there, so let me just pull it back over here into the checking account, and then I'll just cover that. You're not really learning, and you're not educated on what a savings is supposed to be. You're not following a proper budget. You're not tracking your spending to see why you keep having to transfer money over back and forth. So these are things where I'm saying it's a combination of the two. Understand that, yes, you have to make better choices, but you also have to learn what you need to be doing when your money comes in and where you need to be putting it, and knowing that this isn't something that I should be touching over and over and over. And once again, I'm not trying to preach. I'm talking about from experience and saying that these are things that I went through. So hopefully somebody who's listening to this, who's maybe stepping into these situations, doesn't have to go through it, because it is not a fun cycle to go through. And you talk about cycles. You probably know at this point that I like to read a lot of articles and go through these surveys and studies and see what's going on. So historically, the U.S. hasn't been good at saving money either. Americans have a historic savings rate at about 7.98%. And as of August in 2024, our savings rate had dropped down to 4.8%. So don't feel like you're alone, okay? People out there who you think are probably saving a whole bunch of money and probably have it really good, they're probably in the same situation as you. Same situation as all of us, where we really don't have the money set aside, but we're making it look like we do because we're tapping into credit. We got credit lines for this, credit lines for that, for your local grocery store, for your car, for everything. It's all on credit. And we're just going based on the faith that we have in our income that keeps coming in. But once again, been there plenty of times, that one hiccup pops up or you lose that income and everything comes crashing down and you're on that slippery slope trying to get back up to the top. And that's where you see, going back to where we started, a lot of these people having to move back in with their parents, or kids seeing this early enough and saying, wait, I saw this story already happen. I'm not going to go ahead and jump out of the ship early and then try to swim ashore. I'm going to wait. I'm going to keep riding on the ship and seeing, what I got to do. And then when I'm ready, then I'm going to go explore the seas by myself. But a lot of us didn't make that decision. And I think that's why we're seeing a change now in the trend of people moving out early and people saying, I don't need to do that. Why would I keep doing the same cycle that keeps going over and over? That's called insanity. So let me try something different. Mom, I'm gonna hang out here until I'm 25, 26. If I get married, I'm moving out. Maybe I get a great job and then I'm moving out. Maybe I get just a decent job and now I can move out before I'm moving out, making minimum wage or working two jobs and saying I want to go rent my first apartment, also buy a car and do all these things. And I'm barely making $2,000 a month. It's tough. So why put yourself in the situation if you don't have to? So that's the question I'm asking this week. And so that brings me to my first tip of the week, which is track your spending. See exactly where your money's going. I remember doing this a year ago with my brother. I said, you know what? Let's challenge ourselves and just see where we're spending our money. We're spending a lot on DoorDash. It's a lot of, and man, DoorDash will sneak up on you. You start looking back on it. It's like, wow, I spent $40 this week here, another $60 this week. Before you know, you're at a couple $100s a month. And you're telling yourself you can't save money when realistically it was just on food that's being ordered in and out. And that's just one scenario. I know some people who like to buy just regular, say you like to buy clothes, shoes. I remember a year when I bought way too many Nike Prestos. Don't ask me. I can still see them in the closet and they're looking back at me saying, Dekimbe, did you really need all of us? Nope, probably didn't. But that's why I'm challenging you this week. go ahead and start tracking your spending and see if there's an area where you can maybe cut back and save $25, $50. At the end of the month, that could be an extra $100 or $200. How would it feel to have an extra $1,200 or $2,400 at the end of the year, especially if you were having trouble savings before? Because if you're not this person, if you don't have issue saving money, if you're not worried about coming up with a down payment or anything like that in the future, maybe you just have great habits. That's good. Start sharing it with some people who you know don't. Because those are the people I'm talking about. If you feel like, you're really having a hard time getting ahead, just try to follow the money that you have coming in right now and seeing if you can pinch a couple dollars here and there, and it really adds up. We may not always look at it like it adds up, but trust me, it does. So try it out. And finally, I had to leave it off with the content rec of the week. So this week I'm bringing you a book because I think it ties in perfectly with what we're talking about today when it comes to spending habits and, just knowing where your money's going and not trying to live a cheap life, but knowing what you want to do, being aware of, like I said, of where your money's going and how you can be saving towards things that really matter to you in the future. So this week's recommendation is I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And this is a book that I've actually talked about before, a while ago though, probably over a year or two ago on the podcast. But I feel like this one is a very up-to-date version on things and simple things that anybody can implement into their day-to-day lives to start getting a grasp on what's going on with their financial life. Whether that's, like I said, cutting back on certain areas, but still wanting to enjoy certain things, like maybe you like your daily coffee and you don't want to give it up. And I agree with that. I'm not a person that says, okay, that $3, every other day is going to be the thing that make or breaks you. You probably need to do some other things to bring in more income if the $3 is hurting that bad. But Ramit really goes into it in the book and talks about things like that and says, hey, let's see where our money's going. Let's make sure that we're putting our money in the most advantageous vehicles, such as high yield savings accounts, making sure that we're investing, but also making sure that we are improving our skills so that we can get the most income that we can possibly earn out there, right? Make sure that we can put ourselves into jobs that will pay us and get us a better life. So definitely check that out. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And if you have read it, go ahead and drop it in the comments. Let me know what you thought about it or what other financial books that you've read recently that have really helped you in your life, because I'm always trying to learn more. I know people who are listening are always trying to learn more. So just keep sharing. Let's keep learning. And until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and as always, enjoy your first sip.